join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So my request is this, APP 1010 on council member requests. This is what it currently reads. Council members may request items to be added to a future agenda if a majority of council members present at the meeting vote to take up the matter. The process for agendizing council shall be as follows. Under reports and communications section of each agenda, council members may verbally request an item to be agendized at a future meeting. After stating what the item would be, a majority vote of the council is needed in order for staff to agendize. Discussion on the request should be limited to whether the item should be heard at a future meeting. Should the item receive a majority vote, the requesting council member is then required to prepare a written statement explaining the request, why the matter is coming to council, and what action, if any, the council is being asked to take. If the requested discussion will not be agendized until such time the written report by the council member has been received. This is what the APP 1010 says. I don't think it needs to be rewritten. I think we just need to do what it says, because here's what's happening. Council members are turning in the written request. The written request is being put on the agenda. So while it's on the agenda, it's not on the agenda. So people come speak to something that's not on the agenda and they get 2 bites at the apple and it's wrong. So the reason I made the request was to update the AP&P, and then at the low cost of $5.07, which is what the clerk charged me, I have it right here, to find the site, right here, that will be $5.07. I have the email.
I don't recall.
Oh, okay. I don't think that it needs to be rewritten. I don't think it needs to be written more strongly. I think we have to agree as a council to follow the APP 1010s. And if we decide to not follow the APP 1010s, I'm all in.
So
well,
I will
no
make a
to
comment.
your second request.
I will make a comment to that only because Mr. Morgan and I and Ms. Schwab sat on a committee and we did a lot of work to update a lot of stuff. And part of the problem was for the mayor who was there at the time. It was very hard to gavel somebody down in this whole thing about saying, no, you can't speak because it's not on the agenda. Because it's under a council member request. It's not technically on an agenda, but it is on the agenda. And so we had people coming to talk and it's just super confusing. So if we go back to doing it the way that we updated in the APMPT intent to do the verbal, and then it's on there for the next time. Everybody, it's very clear, it's very known, it has an item number, you know where it is on the agenda, you know when you can approximately show up. It's just way clearer. So then I'm good with just following our APMPT.
So my request will be that if you give a written request to the city clerk and she rejects you, you are very nice to her because she is only doing the will of the council. Are we agreed?
So I have a question for the city clerk. Do we need a motion on this, or
No,
just agreeing to
abide by the policy.
Yeah, but we should take public comment on this stuff. So.
We should. Just to be clear, when we put council member requests on and they come with a written request to discuss something, we don't allow public comment on council member requests.
Au contraire. We do. They make it from business from the floor.
So,
because they know it's on the agenda.
And that's not appropriate.
You're really good at it. This is why we're here.
Yeah, there was the community fridge. Was that took too much time? There were 8 speakers, I believe, if I remember correctly.
So the Brown Act says that if business from the floor is for items that are not on the agenda, and so while technically it wasn't, that item, your request was under council member request, and so it wasn't really on the agenda except until it got a vote to be agendized. They were speaking on that from business from the floor. They got 2 bites of the apple, which the Brown Act does not allow.
So would somebody slap us with a cease and desist for allowing excessive public comment?
No,
It's not fair.
You might get slapped with the cease and desist for addressing a non-agenda item as if it's an agenda item.
For the members of the public doing that.
Right. So the idea for the Brown Act is to provide 1 bite at the apple, not 2.
Right, so Councilmember Morgan could say he's going to ask to agendize something. People can show up, it won't be on the agenda, and speak from business to the floor on it.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bite one.
Right.
One bite.
And well, that wouldn't, it's not on the agenda, so it wouldn't be a bite from the apple, and then we would vote to put it on the agenda, and they would then have another opportunity. I just see this as, one, it's not a real problem. Nobody's filibustering city council meetings. We don't have excessive public input that's like hampering our activities. And then two, it's not even an effective solution to the problem because people can still come in and comment on things.
So-
and now we're just putting us in a situation where we cannot inform each other about the substance of what we want to discuss ahead of time. So I have a request on this agenda. I won't talk too much about it, but there is context needed for it. I wouldn't be able to explain it here without somebody saying, well, what do you mean? And then somebody else says, oh, we're not supposed to discuss this. In the meantime, as we go through this, as you kind of alluded to, Vice Mayor Reynolds, like every time there's a question about something we want to discuss, we then start to have a discussion about it. Somebody says you can't discuss that. Meanwhile, we're paying everybody to sit here. It's a measure of efficiency to be able to provide written requests to inform the public and our colleagues about things. I'm sorry if the enterprise record picks up an agenda request and they make an opinion about it beforehand, but I don't think that that is putting us in violation of the Brown Act. This is just a measure of efficiency.
Okay, guys.
So-
One at a time, please.
So, nothing that you said is wrong, except that the order that it's happening. You yourself have used that as a public forum to get it on the agenda so people come speak to something this council has not decided to deliberate.
It sounds like you're accusing me of
Don't interrupt
abuse.
me. Do not interrupt me again. Listen.
Hey, everybody.
Listen.
Guys, come on.
We agreed as a council years ago, this is how we'll agendize our request. You have a request tonight, you make it verbally. You are very articulate, you're very convincing, you make it to the council, we say, yes, we want to discuss that. You give your piece of paper to the city clerk, it comes back, we discuss it. It's that simple. That's what the rules say. If you don't want to follow those rules, the procedure for that is to make a council member request to change the APP 1010. That's how it works. If you don't like those rules, then change them. But that's how they are now.
So we have a current procedure that's been followed since I've been on the council, where we've seen a number of council members make written requests.
Two.
And then we discuss them. What are you talking about?
It's you and one other council member have done it that way.
Yeah, Deepak Tannen had also put on.
Well, then let's go back to following the rules. Or again, we can go back to the free-for-all if that's what you want.
Okay, so I'd like to add something,
Go ahead.
You have the floor.
if I may. So, and I guess what I would say about this is it's fine to have people come and speak on any topic on business from the floor they would like, including something that you're going to agendize later in the meeting that you've told them about. The problem becomes when they're here to speak about your item that's already been listed in support of it because we haven't even agendized it. And I think that's really what the concern is. So I don't think the concern has anything to do with you putting forward an agenda item and having everybody come and speak for it, or Topeka putting forward one.
This rule will apply to everybody, and I think what we are trying to do here is that we have all broken that at some point, and it has happened way too many times that now we need to address it, either to change it or follow it.
We didn't break the rules. Our city clerk has just published the request on the agenda as a measure of convenience. And Councilmember Morgan just said that it was me, and I am the reason that this is being proposed. It is explicitly a move to retaliate against what you saw as an abuse of this by people coming in and speaking on an item that was covered by the enterprise record because they saw the written request on the agenda. That wasn't my fault. It wasn't me orchestrating that. And I also would say that that's not a heinous thing to do, is to invite the public in to give input on something, knowing that there's a good chance you're not going to support any request that I bring up, as has been the case thus far. And so this is one of the few things that I get as a one minority on this council, and now you're looking to change our administrative policy and procedure in order to smash my opportunity to do this in the future. That's what I see. This is the driving force here.
May I have the floor, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
That was very dramatic, and it was fantastic, except I'm not asking to change the policy. I'm asking that we stick to the policy. And I'm not talking about whatever item you're talking about that Evan wrote about, because Councilmember Van Overbeck has done the exact same thing. And the challenge is, we've put the city clerk in an impossible position, because she knows the rules, but she reports to all of you. So if you come in and say, here's my request, go ahead and put this on there, what's she gonna tell you? No, I'm asking, this is all I'm really asking. We respect the rules that we have a council have agreed upon, and we respect the city clerk. And if you don't want to do that, I'm not terribly surprised.
I'm confused.
Hey,
I'm
enough
confused
with the
why this is
comments
proposed
from
as
audience,
it was
please.
proposed as a change to
Council
administrative policy procedure, and you're saying it doesn't need to be a change. However, what we did previously by sending in written requests needs to change. Like, could you not have just asked that that be the case, that there was a mistake, that Ms. Preston was making a mistake the whole time by publishing written requests?
Gentlemen, I'm certain you can go back and forth about this all in the entirety of the night, but we're going to move forward with public comment on this side.
So we have two speakers, Jessica Gianola and Bryce Goldstein.
Council, I was hoping to see that this item was being brought forth for technicality reasons, maybe just make sure we're all doing the same thing. I don't necessarily see that we are. We did just had an item just before this where it was on the agenda, but we weren't allowed to speak kind of thing, even though it was explained that we couldn't speak because it was not a Brown Act, but I don't know. So we're just not being consistent. I do see this item that's being brought forth as a silencing attempt. Everybody can see it. That's their interpretation because that's what's happening. The way we have it now, yes, it's the rules, that a person, a council member brings forth an item. He's got to get someone else up there approval to agree with it, to come forward for discussion. When we have 6-1, that's never going to happen unless you happen to like that item. So our only chance as the public, because this is really what it comes down to, is our voice, our bites at the apple. That is us that you're talking about. If we have a concern in our community, it's our community. It should be the will of the people. This is our home. Every decision you make impacts us. And if we want to make a comment, and often it's limited to 1 minute, tonight it's 2 minutes, once, twice a month, and you're complaining that we are getting 2 bites of the apple. It's absolutely absurd to me. If there is something important, we want to bring it up. If it's not on an official agenda item and it's on the agenda, then we speak to it from business from the floor. If it's going to be allowed to be spoken at the end of the night, then we speak at the end of the night. Wherever it is, we should be able to speak on it. Whether or not it's been a discussion anywhere else, it's just absurd. So anyway, down to my 2 minutes here, twice a month. Our voice needs to be honored out here and not bickering over how many bites we get of an apple of talking about something that's important to us. Thank you.
Bryce Goldstein is our last speaker.
Good evening again. So it sounds like we've established this is kind of a reaction to one council member submitting too many written requests, but multiple members of the council have done this, so submitted their written requests. To me, it seems like written requests are efficient, and yes, sometimes people read them or it gets picked up by the newspaper, and they speak at business from the floor, but I'm the sort of person who loves to see opportunities for the public to speak on things. So my hot take here is that we should change the rules and amend APMP 1010 to allow written requests if I'm understanding the issue correctly here, because we've seen council member requests come up and then die for lack of a second or get voted down, and I want to see the people be able to speak on these. So let's change the rules if the rules are a problem.
All right, thank you, everybody. So we don't need a motion to change anything. We don't need anything realistically, unless someone wants to make a motion to change things. Which, on those items on the agenda, they could certainly change from here. Yeah. Anyway, so if there's no motion, we'll move on.
But, I mean, we are giving direction to staff, is what I'm hearing. You're trying to say
So,
that we should change what we have been doing since I've been elected to this council. I've taken the opportunity 2 times to put in requests on the agenda. And now that's not going to happen anymore without any motion with the end of discussion here. Is that where we're at?
It happened 6 times in the first meeting.
Okay, wait, you guys, it's not about Addison. And I appreciate the maliciousness that everybody assumes that I have. That's fantastic, I get it. But it was never about, this was as much about my friend Tom Van Overbeck doing exactly the same thing and people would come and they'd speak and and we can talk about the 2 bites at the apple. That's a Brown Act violation. That's not me. We have rules or we don't have rules. I'm just saying this is how it's written. I'm asking you to please respect the way that it's written and respect the city clerk and don't put her in a strange spot. And if we're going to change it, then make that motion and we'll do what we do.
So this is the second meeting in a row that we have not been able to get through the agenda. And so I completely support Councilor Morgan's suggestion that we go back to obeying the rules so we can be more efficient. So how do we move this forward, Madam Clerk?
So after listening to this, I would appreciate a motion because I think it would be clear, and then I could refer to incoming council members that this is the way the protocol is. I think that when after the first swearing in and the request came in, I said you can just make them at the meeting. But I am not going to tell a council member you're not going to place an item on the agenda. So I would prefer if the council would direct me that we are going to follow the policy or change the policy.
So I will make a motion requesting that the city clerk adhere to the APP 1010s, as they're written, and politely let people know what they say if we are not in order.
I second.
Is that enough direction, Madam Clerk?
No, you change the interpretation from what we.
The interpretation is very clear. Just because you and someone else didn't follow it doesn't mean it's not written clearly.
I mean, I didn't put it on the agenda myself. I'm quite to the contrary. Like December 6th, 2022, 23, I was sworn in council and I brought 6 items to discuss, and 5 out of 6 items died without a second, and Vice Mayor Reynolds offered me friendly advice that I share these items well in advance of the meetings. And now a colleague to the left is proposing to amend the rules so that I can't do that. So we are changing what we have done since I.
Gentlemen, please. We've had you guys go back and forth plenty tonight. I think it's not getting the rest of the council and the public anywhere. So if you want to address the public, let's address the public.
There are very few things I get as a minority in this council, and one of that is I get to speak my piece before we take an action. So
absolutely. And you're allowed to speak your piece, but you guys going back and forth is not helpful to anybody. So speak your piece, speak to the public. They're happy to hear it. Continue.
Excuse me. So we're concerned that there's 2 bites taken from the apple, that there's excessive public comment coming on, knowing very well that if this is an issue and this is the feeling that this process is being leveraged to heinous use, then we can still have people come in and speak if this is the floor. So it doesn't really solve any of the issue. All it does is prevent us from seeing each other's requests ahead of time, which is exactly what Vice Mayor Reynolds suggested that I do in order to get you all familiar, because I bring up things sometimes that you don't have any background on. It's not the only time I have. I actually brought an example of how a well-written request can benefit public discourse, because we have context in order to present things. It was just a random example that I had of a council member named Mark Sorensen proposing a process for appointing boards and commissions. And see how there's a whole current selection method, there's a proposal. You can pass these down to the others. Just so you.
Are we sticking with the 2-minute limit?
Not a 2-minute limit.
No, but we were trying to just share the public's.
So maybe.
I think we've adequately heard
If there's a request like this,
point of view.
could be just shared with the council and not put on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting.
That's a Brown Act violation. That's what I understand.
No.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'll call the question.
Call the question. This is a beautiful example. I appreciate the condescending nature of it. It's a beautiful example. You can still do this. Tom Van Overbeek can still do it. Casey can still do it. After they make the verbal request and the council says, yes, we're going to talk about it, write it up. It's fantastic.
Right, we're not allowed to share it before.
Gentlemen,
we got to be tucked into our chest as if we're playing a card game, but this is not a card game. This is a democratic decision-making body.
Mr. Winslow.
We have the obligation to
Mr. Winslow.
provide an understanding for
the question's
colleagues
been
and
called.
everybody in order to have informed responses.
know.
I don't trust, frankly, that you're going to support requests that I bring forward if you don't have context, you don't feel pressure from the public knowing what these requests are. So this is one of the few things that I get as a minority, and I'm going to seek to maintain that. And this is a great example Mr. Sorensen proposing how we can have individual nominations for commissioners and why that is a benefit.
Mr. Winslow, can I interrupt?
Yes, please.
We're going to have council member request in a minute, so we can get through this item, and then on council member request,
We're not,
you could
because we're
request
past 10.
We're not going to get there, but.
We're past 10 because we spent the last 10
This can
minutes
be brought up, back up at another meeting. We're
not moving on to our next item.
Go to the question.
Okay, Councilmember Bennett. And this is just confirming the current policy that's in place in 1010.
I do confirm the current policy, yes.
Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Tandon?
Yes.
Councilmember Van Overbeck?
Yes.
Councilmember Winslow?
No.
Vice Mayor Reynolds?
Yes.
Mayor Coolidge?
Hesitantly, yes.
Carries 6-1.